So yeah, we put this exhibit together along with the Wheaton Park District, which is our parent organization, to really celebrate the Park District's anniversary and its impact in Wheaton for the past 100 years, and allowing people, giving people opportunities for recreation and beautiful parks as well. So this photo is a big overview of the exhibit. This is really everything that's on display. As you can see, there's a lot of the different photos in the panels. So that's what I'm going to be showing you on the PowerPoint. And then later we'll jump in and take a closer look at the artifacts on display as well. So to kind of get started, so the Park District was formed in 1921. Basically what happened was local citizens of Wheaton filed a petition to form the Park District, and they had a referendum to get the Park District formed. And so the referendum was actually very popular. People in Wheaton really wanted the Park District for a lot of different reasons. And this image here actually kind of lists a couple of them. So this advertisement was posted in the Wheaton Progressive, which was the precursor to the Wheaton Daily Journal. And so this is an advertisement that promoters of the Park District put in the paper to get people to go out and vote for the Park District. And so kind of looking at this, you could see a lot of the different reasons for wanting the Park District. So people wanted, really a big driver was they wanted to create a memorial to the 400 to 500 Wheaton soldiers who perished, or the 400 to 500 Wheaton soldiers who served in World War I, to really give them a memorial to them and also to the couple Wheaton soldiers who died in the conflict as well. They also wanted to give the American Legion a place to meet, which was a veterans organization which had a lot of the World War I veterans in it. And then another reason is they wanted a place where the Boys and Girl Scouts and other organizations could meet. And then they also wanted athletic fields, playgrounds, a swimming pool. So really Wheaton residents wanted these amenities. And so they were willing to pay the extra taxes for it because they knew they'd be getting all these services. And so the referendum passed with a 3-to-1 majority. So 547 people voted for the Park District and only 159 voted against it. And so this is really what got the ball rolling with the Wheaton Park District. And so once the referendum passed, the Park District was formed, and then also the first park board was elected as well. And they started to get to work on getting the Park District running. So the first park they acquired was Memorial Park, and they actually acquired it very quickly. So in November, they actually purchased the Memorial Park property from the family of Judge Elbert Gary. Elbert Gary was a Wheaton lawyer who moved to New York in 1900, and then he became nationally famous because he became the president and a founder of US Steel, which was a really big, kind of one of the big titans of industry, corporations of the Gilded Age. And so he became very popular through that. But so his family sold the land that used to be his house, Memorial Park. And the Park District, we're unsure if the Park District knocked down the house or if it was already knocked down when they bought it. But all that was left of the Gary house and property was his carriage house. And so the Park District took the carriage house and renovated it. And this became the Park District's kind of main office where they met. It also became the American Legion's headquarters. And also, they also rented it out to community groups as well. So a lot of different uses from this one building. And so they named the park Memorial Park after the Wheaton's World War I soldiers who served. And so they formed the park, and that started getting off the ground. They built tennis courts and landscaped the property. But it wasn't until 1929 that they then purchased the Doughboy statue that's at the park still today at a new memorial. They actually purchased this. So the Doughboy was actually a copy or bronze casting of another sculpture called Over the Top to Victory. And so it depicts a World War I doughboy or soldier in action. And so really with this then became a place where the community of Wheaton could go and they could remember the Wheaton soldiers who served in World War I, and also the ones who perished in combat as well. And so after Memorial Park, the Park District then purchased what's now Central Park at Main and Roosevelt Road. And then a couple of years later, in 1927, the Park District purchased Northside Park. They began purchasing land for that. And so with Northside Park purchase, the first thing they did was they built the Northside Park pool. So the pool was it's a really interesting structure. So Wheaton residents really wanted a pool in their community during the summer, as we all like our pools today to go in the summer. And so they built this pool. So the first Northside pool was actually an above ground pool. It doesn't look like this. The deck was kind of the second floor of it, and you entered from the bottom. But so the pool was, it was 75 feet by 120 feet, had a diving board. They later added in kind of a waiting area, which you could see over here, where kids who are young kids who were still learning how to swim, who didn't swim yet, could wade safely and not be in the pool. So the pool was incredibly popular. Over 2,000 bathers came in the first week, and Wheaton really liked having the pool. And I'm still kind of trying to confirm this, but I think Wheaton's public pool was the first public pool in all of DuPage County. Still working on researching that completely, but it was definitely one of the first in the county. So this is another view. So you can kind of see over here. So this is where the first story of the pool was. And so you actually entered from the bottom of under the pool, kind of where these windows are. The entrance was somewhere else. You would come in there, there were locker rooms, and then you would go up to the pool deck to swim. Right, so once with the Northside Park pool done, so the Park District started working on landscaping Northside Park. And one of the things they wanted to do was there was a sanitary sewer, or sanitary, not a sanitary sewer, a retention drainage ditch that is actually Winfield Creek today. So the Park District wanted to turn that into a lagoon. And so even though the Great Depression started in 1929, the Park District still went ahead with their plans. They hired a private construction company who began digging the Northside Park Lagoon. And so for 1930 and 1931, this company started digging the lagoon. They built the dam, which you can kind of see in this picture right here. And that started, so it was kind of like making a man-made lake where they created the dam to help bring the water up, but they also dug the lagoon as well to make it kind of a beauty spot for the community. But after 1931, the Great Depression started to really hit Wheaton a little harder. And so they kind of stopped working on the lagoon for the time being for about 2 years or 2 or 3 years. And then in 1934, the Park District worked, so with the New Deal was just kind of getting off the ground. Franklin Delano Roosevelt became president. And so one of his first New Deal agencies was called the Federal Emergency Relief Administration, or FERA. And this was kind of the precursor of the Works Progress, which came a couple years later. But the Park District actually made an application to FERA, and they got money and laborers to continue working on the Northside Park Lagoon and really landscape Northside Park in general. So the FERA laborers finished dredging the lagoon and creating the lagoon. They planted trees and shrubs and landscaped Northside Park. They also constructed the bridges to the islands. So the kind of iconic Northside Park Bridge was created in around 1934 by the FERA laborers. It was designed by a landscape architect named Chance Hill, who operated out of Downers Grove. But so that they built the bridges to the islands in the Northside Park Lagoon, and these workers also constructed the Boy Scout cabin. So this picture is a really early photo of Northside Park. It is from the I would say it's from early 1940s. You see the bridge. This is kind of looking towards, this is like the old skating shelter that's over here. So yeah, and then the Boy Scout cabin was built at this time by the Farah laborers. And it was actually overseen by a park board commissioner named Gordon McKenzie, who was also the city engineer of Wheaton, for the city of Wheaton. So he had the skills and he was using them to help the park district as well. And so actually when he passed away in the 1940s, they named the Boy Scout cabin after him in his honor. So it's still the Gordon McKenzie Boy Scout cabin today. So after this first bout, after the Park District worked with FERA, the FERA actually stopped being a federal agency and it was reorganized and it became the Works Progress Administration, which did very similar thing. It was just organized a little bit differently. So really in 1936, Wheaton Park District started getting grants and labor from the Works Progress Administration to work on a lot of different projects. They created a baseball field. They built kind of a walkway around the memorial obelisk that's at Northside Park right now, or that has been at Northside Park since the 30s. And then the other project they did was they built the Girl Scout cabin. So this photo is probably one of my favorites. It's kind of blurry, but it was actually in a newspaper, a local Wheaton newspaper, and you could see really right in front of the house, the USA Works Progress Administration sign. These posters they would put in front of projects to kind of raise awareness of the Works Progress Administration. So this was shortly after the Girl Scout cabin was finished. The Girl Scout cabin was made out of old railroad ties. So that's kind of gives it its unique look. The Boy Scout cabin was actually made with, it's hard, I don't know if they were used telephone poles, but a telephone company gave the logs that the Park District then used to build the Boy Scout cabin. So it's kind of interesting. It's like almost a recycling of materials, especially during the Great Depression. The Park District, in 1938, they got another big grant. And one of the projects they did with that was they built the log skating shelter at Northside Park that's still there today. And so the log skating shelter was really used mostly in the winter to give ice skaters a place where they can come in and put their ice skates and also warm up in between going out into the pond or the lagoon to ice skate. And so it served Wheaton for about 20 years until the 1950s when they built the current Northside Park warming shelter that's there right now. Some other Works Progress Administration projects the Park District did was they renovated the carriage house, or the Gary Carriage House at Northside Park, or at the Carriage House at Memorial Park for the American Legion, so to help update it a little more. They constructed a bandstand there that was a precursor to the current one. So kind of going ahead. So the Park District really remained kind of small for its first 50 years. Besides Northside, Memorial, and Central Park, they really didn't have a lot of parks to start off with at first. So in 1941, the Park District bought a building right by Central Park that used to be a restaurant. It was called the Clubside Inn. The restaurant relocated in the 1930s. And so the Park District bought the building and they used it to kind of expand Central Park down to Roosevelt Road. But they also acquired this building, which they actually purchased the building originally to give community groups a place to meet and kind of have meetings and other things. And so the Park District over the years, they rented space in the building to a lot of different organizations. The Wheaton High School Board of Education rented it from in the 40s to 50s. And then the YMCA rented it for a while. The B.R. Ryle YMCA before they built their new building in Glen Ellen. The DuPage Art League used the building in the 60s for a little bit. And then after that, the Park District made it its main office. And the building was torn down a couple years ago because it was getting dilapidated and such. But so this is the building right before it was torn down. So this then became the Park District's main headquarters. So to sign up for programs, you would have to go here right at Roosevelt and Main Street, sign up in person. The Park District's employees and officers had their offices here as well. And so kind of jumping ahead. So in 1947, the Green Valley Country Club, which was a country club on the south side of Wheaton, kind of just south of Roosevelt Road, south of downtown in that area. And so the Green Valley Country Club actually closed down in 1947, or closed down in 1945. And then 2 years later, they sold a lot of the land to the Fairway Estates subdivision to build houses. But the Green Valley Country Club also donated Kelly Park to the Park District. So Kelly Park was part of the golf course at the country club, and they named it Kelly Park after Ed Kelly, who was the manager of the Green Valley Country Club for many years. He was a very popular figure in the community. And so this picture here actually shows Ed Kelly right here, teeing off at Green Valley Country Club. And so the Park District took Kelly Park, and they actually waited until about the 60s to develop it, along with Rathjee Park, which I'll talk about next. So Rathjee Park was donated to the Park District in 1951. Judge Bertram Rathjee, who is a popular figure in the community, he arranged for two of his clients to donate their land that is now part of Rathjee Park to the Park District. Rathjee Park used to be a big kind of country estate, and so the pond that was there was created in like the late 19th century, and it was part of the W.J. Hines estate. And so the Park District took Rathjee Park, and then they actually added to Rathjee Park in the 50s and 60s. And so the original parcel of Rathjee Park was kind of on Dells Road, kind of really just the northern portion around the pond, but then the Park District bought parcels to really connect the park down to Roosevelt Road in the 50s. And then in 1969, they added the Rathjee Park House. This photo, so Rathjee Park wasn't developed immediately. The Park District was actually trying to get referendums passed to develop Rathjee Park and Kelly Park. A lot of them were failing. So this actually is a sign that they were advertising at Rathjee Park to say, if you want this developed, vote yes for the referendum. And so yeah, the Park District purchased the Rathjee Park House in 1969. This was the brought Rathjee Park to its current size, and they actually decided to keep the building on the property. So this is a sale ad from the 60s for the Rathjee Park House, 616 Dells Road. It looks very similar to today. And what's really unique about the Rathjee Park House was really right after the Park District bought it in 1969, they started using it for their preschool program, which was originally called the Tot Lot program, and then it became Wide Horizons Preschool. So really, since the Park District has owned the Rathjee Park House, it has been a place where preschool has been conducted. And so there it is today. And it's still used as a preschool today. It's also been used for other recreation programs. The Park District gave offices in here to like the Prairie Path and other environmental organizations back in like the 70s and 80s. Yeah. So really, once the Park District hits its second 50 years in the 1970s, the Park District starts making a lot of major changes. Oh, before we get there, missed one. So the Memorial Park bandshell was built in the 1950s. The first part of it was built in 1954 and or 1952. And the city of Wheaton actually built the bandshell on the Park District's land. The city really wanted a place for the Wheaton Municipal Band to hold summer concerts, which they still do today. And so the city foot the bill, the Park District gave the land, and they originally only built really the stage and then the walls. So it was kind of more of a bandstand at first in 1952. But then later in 1958, the Park District actually ended up leasing the land around the bandstand, the land around the bandstand to the city of Wheaton, and they finished constructing it. They added the top of the band shell, the roof, which really made it more of an acoustic band shell where the sound was being projected outwards more. And so, yeah, and then the band shell was there until recently when it was reconstructed as part of the Memorial Park redevelopment project. This is a fun picture. So this was one of the Park District's first maintenance vehicles that they bought in the 1950s. It is a Rio Speed Wagon. And so the Parks Department will use this, which was really in the 1950s only about 2 people to go around, conduct maintenance on the parks as well. And I also like this picture because it kind of shows one of the early Wheaton Park District logos as well. And so the Parks Department remained rather small until the 70s as well, when the Park District's parks began to grow a lot. So by the time we get to the 1960s, the original Northside Park pool was becoming too small. It was becoming outdated and hard to maintain. And so the Park District started having referendums in the late 50s to build a new pool. But it wasn't until about 1964 when the Park District came up with a plan. The Park District came up with a plan to build the pool. So what they did is they bought what's called revenue bonds, which is where they pay back the bonds and the money for the pool through their like their pool pass sales, concession sales. So this was a way to make it so that the pool would kind of pay for itself through admissions and such. And so the Wheaton community liked this idea, and they approved a referendum to let the Park District do this, and also get more money for other parts of the Park District as well. So the second Northside Park pool, which is still in use today, is actually built with Olympic dimensions. It was much bigger. It's kind of more of a traditional pool. Definitely that was, you would see in the 1960s. This photo kind of shows it on a busy day, people around. There was a wading pool on the side of the pool that's still there today as well. But so yeah, this pool served the Park District very well. They did a major renovation of the pool in 1994, but really besides that, the Northside Park pool is still in use today and going strong. And the old pool, instead of tearing down the old pool, they actually ended up burying it with dirt. And so now it's the sledding hill at Northside Park, or Coe Hill. So that's where the old pool is. So kind of once we hit the 1970s, the Park District started changing in a lot of ways, really becoming the Park District that we know today. The Park District began, they began thinking more about where their parks are located in response to the citizens of Wheaton, to really make sure. So they started buying land for smaller parks and also some bigger parks as well. So really the Park District's goal was to have a park within walking distance for most Wheaton residents. And so they did this in a lot of different ways. They partnered with the school districts to create park/school sites, which a lot of them are still around today, like Lincoln Park and Madison Park. The Park District leased land from the city of Wheaton and Milton Township. And then another way was the Park District passed what was called a land cash donation ordinance. And so what this meant was when new developers in Wheaton created a residential community, they needed to set aside land for the Park District to create parks. And so that's how the Park District acquired a lot of parks like Hurley Gardens, and some of the other, like Scottdale Park is another one. And so the Park District built playgrounds. A lot of time they left them as detention basins for communities. Sunnyside Park is a good example of kind of one of the smaller neighborhood parks the Park District bought. Really right in the community, playground for kids, can be used by families in the area. Another way that the Park District changed in the 70s was they started to offer significantly more recreation programs. They began hiring staff specifically to run recreation programs. This is a picture of a tumbling program that the Park District began offering. And so they really kind of had a mindset as they wanted to have recreation opportunities for really every age group, every interest as much as possible. The Park District had their first community center was at the old Washington School building that they rented from the school district and used to offer most of their programs. And then this would later kind of drive them to build the current community center today. Also in the 1970s, the Park District started the senior recreation program, which is still very popular today, active adult program. So they hired a recreation employee named Mary Lubko, and Mary Lubko worked with the active adults of Wheaton to kind of develop programs for them. And they really developed quite a robust program, social groups, sports programs, holiday parties, music groups, workshops and outings. And so all those things are still very much going on today. This photo shows the pedal pusher program, and they're actually right in front of the old Gary Carriage House, which became the leisure center and became the central base for senior programs. And Mary Lubko worked until, I believe she retired in 1991. And then after she passed away in 2015, the Park District renamed the leisure center the Mary Lubko Center, and it's still in use today. So in the 70s, the Park District had a couple different referendums. So one referendum they did was to purchase Atten Park. So the land for Atten Park was owned by Judge William Atten. And so after he passed away, the Park District purchased it after getting the approval in a referendum. At this time, they also purchased Graff Park as well from William and Bernice Graff. And so the Park District started to build these. These were much bigger parks, and they also helped expand the Park District's acreage. This photo is from 1982, and it shows the newly built park shelter at Atten Park. Another big acquisition in this time period was what we know today as Cosley Zoo. Before we get to Cosley Zoo. So the Park District also did another referendum in 1975 to purchase Seven Gables Park. Seven Gables was called Seven Gables Farm. It was owned by the Wetmore family, who are really big in banking in Chicago, and it was kind of their estate. So the Park District purchased it and developed it over the years, and it's I think it's the biggest Park District park right now as well, but it's still very much in use today, especially for sports programs. So going back to Cosley Zoo. So Cosley Zoo is a really unique story in the Park District's history. So a woman named Paula Jones inherited her family's land, the Cosley family, who kind of owned land in northwest Wheaton. And so she inherited the land, and she didn't have much use for it. And so she worked with the Park District and donated the land. And she did it under the stipulation that the land be used for a children's park of some sort. So the Park District came up with the idea to have, they called it originally Cosley Children's Park and Museum. They added domestic farm animals, and they really wanted it to be kind of a recreation of a 19th century farm that Wheaton settlers would have used back in the day. The property came with the old, Wheaton's old Chicago and Northwestern Railway Depot, which had been moved to the Cosley family moved it to their property and turned it into a house. And so the Park District restored that back into the depot that's still there today. And so they also wanted both to talk about agricultural history and also like Wheaton's history in general with the historic building. And then they also began adding in native wildlife. And so really it kind of became much more of a zoo like we know today. So it was called Cosley Children's Park at first, but then name was changed to Cosley Animal Farm and Museum, which the name it retained for about 40, 50 years. And so this photo here actually shows Paula Jones cutting the ribbon for Cosley Park. with a couple park commissioners, and they also had a young Wheaton child at the ribbon cutting too, to represent the children of Wheaton and really who this park was for. But really, over the years, Cosley Zoo grew into much more of a professional zoo. In the 80s, they started doing a lot of fundraising for capital improvements. They built the Vernonkeebler Learning Center barn, which actually allowed Cosley Zoo to then remain open year-round. So before, they were only they're restricted by seasons, spring, summer, fall. But with the Vernonkeebler Learning Center, they could bring the animals inside for the winter and still be open. And this led to things like zoo lights and the Christmas tree sales and such. And really, Cosley Zoo began adopting much more professional standards. And really, by 1999, Cosley Zoo, what the name Cosley Animal Farm didn't really represent what Cosley Zoo was still doing. So they changed the name to Cosley Zoo. And then a year later, the zoo got accreditation from the Association of Zoos and Aquarium, and has really just continued growing, adding more animal exhibits, more education programs, really being at the forefront of kind of zoology in the nation as well. And so this photo shows Cosley Zoo employee helping resident feed a cat or give a calf some milk. So another big purchase that the Park District did in the 70s was they began purchasing Lincoln Marsh. So in 1979, the Park District bought the first parcel of Lincoln Marsh, which was kind of close to the Prairie Path. And so right away they opened the team obstacle stress challenge course, which is still in use today as well. So these photos are from the 70s when it would have just been starting. So that was a big thing they did at Lincoln Marsh. But then the Park District also began partnering with the Forest Preserve District and City of Wheaton and some other local government organizations to really purchase much more of the Lincoln Marsh land. So they purchased it really in the 80s and 90s or early 90s. In 1992, they finished purchasing Lincoln Marsh land for the time being, and they had a dedication. And then the Park District really started to work on rebuilding it environmentally. And so they hired a person who oversaw the education at Lincoln Marsh, but also the ecological restoration. In 1989, the Park District did a big cleanup of Lincoln Marsh, and they actually removed 10 rusty cars that people had just abandoned in the marsh. And so this photo here, you could actually see the rusty cars just right in the marshland there. And so the Park District began cleaning it up, and they've continued to expand the marsh and keep on restoring it up to the present day. In the 80s, the Park District began what is now called the Taste of Wheaton Festival in May/June. So they originally called it the Cream of Wheaton Festival. The first one was in 1982, and really the Park District grew the event over the years. It started off just being like a place for food booths and entertainment, but they added in the arts and crafts fair, carnival rides, a small petting zoo from Cosley Zoo. They turned the run that was part of the Cream of Wheaton into the Run for the Animals. And so the name Cream of Wheaton stuck until 2009 when the Park District began running the event with the Wheaton Chamber of Commerce. They renamed it the Taste of Wheaton. But for many years, it was the Cream of Wheaton. A lot of local residents still call it that. It's actually quite funny. The name Cream of Wheaton was kind of started almost as a joke in the Park District's planning meetings, but then it kind of stuck because it was kind of the cream of the crop, the best of Wheaton. So that's kind of what kept the name around for so long. In the 80s, another big purchase the Park District made was buying Arrowhead Golf Course on Butterfield Road. The Park District had wanted a golf course for a long time. They actually, when they bought Northside Park in the late 20s, they thought about putting a golf course there, but it didn't end up working out. So in 1982, they purchased Arrowhead Golf Club, which Arrowhead Golf Club was started in 1926 as the Antlers Golf Club. It was founded by members of the Elks organization in the western suburbs. So various lodges came together and formed the golf course. And it was called Antlers Golf Club because they were elks, but they also had kind of a green with 2 ponds that kind of looked like antler ears. The land before the golf club, before Antlers Golf Club, was farmland, and so there was still an old farmhouse on the property that they used as the clubhouse and added to over the years. This is from, I believe, 1939. Antlers Golf Club eventually changed their name to Arrowhead Golf Club because during construction they found a lot of Native American arrowheads and artifacts on the property, and so that's what they decided to rename it. So the Park District acquired Arrowhead in 1982, and then they began throughout the 90s and 2000s kind of updating and revamping the 3 golf courses, 3 9-hole golf courses on the property. They also added in a new, they kind of updated the facilities as well. So right before the Park District, so this kind of shows Arrowhead in the early years of the Park District. Before they built the new clubhouse, you can kind of still see part of the stone house being incorporated into it, but also they added in to add a restaurant and banquet halls. And then around 2004 is when they built the current Arrowhead Golf Club clubhouse that's still in use today, much bigger, still very, very popular in, for restaurant and banquets and such. So I had mentioned the Park District had a community center at the old Washington School. So that school, it started to get too small, and also the school district wanted the school back so that they could start having classes there again. So the Park District had a referendum in 1986 where they basically the community approved gave the Park District permission to then build a larger community center and also a new pool. So the Park District built Rice Pool first. This kind of shows Rice Pool under construction here. They wanted Rice Pool to be a little bit different from the more traditional pool at Northside. It had a zero, what's called a zero entry pool, meaning the kind of water, you enter the pool at kind of water level, and you kind of in the water, the pool slowly slopes down, so it's a little bit more accessible for people to use as well. They also added in the water slides and things like that as well. And the Rice Pool opened in May 1989. The community center was built kind of at the same time. They both are on the same property. And the community center, they built it really to be the perfect place to have all types of recreation programs. This photo shows the 7 Gables gym and then the Prairie Path track when it was under construction. So they constructed this, and the community center opened in May or September of 1990, and it's still in use today. It's kind of going into the 2000s. The Park District has done a lot, still continued to add a lot of different things to the community. In 2000, the Park District purchased what was called the Sunny Ridge Family Center on Orchard Road in Wheaton, and they wanted to create a safety city. So they named the park Toohey Park after late Park Board Commissioner Roger Toohey. And so the Kiwanis Club partnered with the Park District. They constructed the safety city layout, which kind of helps teach kids proper safety rules and etiquette and such, and also is really a fun place to learn for kids as well. The safety city layout's designed after downtown Wheaton. So the safety city was completed in 2000, and then the Park District also renovated the building on the property to be kind of a classroom space as well. Another big project that the Park District worked on for many years was the Laurie Most Overpass, which connects Graff Park in Lincoln Marsh, and it goes over the railroad tracks over there. So kind of the catalyst for the community of Wheaton wanting an overpass over these tracks was occurred in 1993 when a 12-year-old named Laurie Most, she was a student at Monroe Middle School, and she was trying to get home. Her home was on the other side of the train tracks, and she actually train actually ended up hitting her as she was trying to cross. And so the Wheaton community really, local residents pushed for an overpass there to be a safe place for students to cross over, going back home from school, or just general community members as well. It proved to be a very difficult project for a lot of different reasons. The Park District ended up really taking up the helm of it, working with so many different organizations, the Illinois Department of Transportation, DuPage County, all these different groups to obtain the funds for the overpass. And they eventually finished it. The Park District got involved in about 2000. And so it started to be constructed from 2006 to 2007, and then it was finished. This picture shows the part of the overpass being constructed. And so the Park District then, after it was finished, named the overpass after Lori Most, who had passed away because while crossing the train track. So kind of coming full circle there. And then one last project I'll talk about in the Park District's history is the Central Athletic Complex. So basically what happened is the Central Athletic Complex used to be the site of Wheaton. It was originally called Wheaton High School. It was built in 1925. It later became Wheaton Central High School after Wheaton North was built. But by the 90s, the school district was using it for Hubble Middle School, but the building was kind of very large and it was kind of too big for the middle school. It was hard to keep maintenance, to maintain. So the Park District worked with a development company to where most of the old school became Mariano's, but then the Park District turned the athletic wing into the Central Athletic Complex, where they repurposed the gyms for all the athletic programs. They kept the athletic fields as well. And then they also built a Rotary Park, which is kind of an extension of Central Park over by Mariano's as well. And so the Central Athletic Complex today is still used for a lot of the Park District's athletic programs. They've also since then built an ice skating rinks that opened in 2016 for the community to use in the winter as well. And so that's really the end of the photo part of the presentation. Now I'll jump onto a different camera and I'll show you all the exhibit in a little bit closer. These swimsuits are an example of what people would have used when they first went to the Northside Park pool when it opened in 1928. This was kind of the style. The men's swimsuit is on the right in the screen, the women on the left. And it's actually really interesting. The 1920s men's and women's swimsuits looked pretty similar, actually. It was kind of a time when they were both kind of at the same place. But so also here you could see down here a picture of the Northside Park pool. This is the diving board right when it would have opened in 1928, kind of shows similar swimsuits. Also here we have a pair of ice skates that a local Wheaton resident named Louise Spanky used at Rathjee Park in the 1950s when she was ice skating there. So in the background here, so this is a sign for Cosley Zoo back when it was still Cosley Animal Farm and Museum. You could see the original name, which was Cosley Park, and then the newer name under it, Animal Farm and Museum. Very cool old sign that we have from the Parks Department. Then also we have a tennis racket. So tennis was a big part of the Wheaton Park District. The first tennis courts in the Park District were at Memorial Park in the 1920s. They actually originally, the Park District would only let people play tennis during the weekdays. This was kind of a rule. They didn't want people playing tennis on Sunday since it was a Sabbath day, but they eventually left it up to the discretion of the community for when they wanted to play tennis. Also, we have an old fishing pole. So after the Northside Park Lagoon was finished was mostly finished in 1935. The Park District began letting people fish there as well, and eventually Rathjee Park also. And the fishing derby became, the park district first started having a fishing derby in about the 1980s as well. So moving on over here, we have some old baseball memorabilia. So for most of the park district's history, all the athletic programs were run by what was called the Wheaton Athletic Association. And so they worked with the park district. They used baseball fields at Northside Park and Central Park as well. So this, the jersey here was used from 1947 to 1956. It was a local adult men's team who played in kind of an intramural league with other towns. You also see an old baseball bat, old baseball glove. The picture here is actually of a Wheaton North High School game, one of the games they had at a park district baseball field as well. And yeah, and then kind of coming over here. So over here, so this sign that's here is actually a poster from the 1986 referendum that the park district did, that they used to get permission to build a rice pool in the community center. It's kind of hard to see it from here, but the poster is actually signed by the current members of the park district staff. So kind of a little note on the park district staff. The park district, when it first opened, or when it first started in the 20s, they only had 3 part-time positions: the secretary of the Board of Commissioners, the treasurer, and an attorney. And really the rest of the kind of administration and maintenance was run by the park board members themselves. But then in the 1960s, the park district hired the first executive director, and then they began hiring more professional staff from there. Really, the park district today employs over 1,000 people in full-time, part-time, and seasonal jobs. So it's really a big growth from the original 3 positions as well.